It's pretty rare to see a character with such a strong Rizz that it actually spills out of the screen, like they're actively trying to expand their harem into real life. And succeeding. That's Muramasa for you, a character absolutely adored by fans. From his first appearance, he had a mysterious vibe, an insanely cool design, and a personality that's basically Shirou++. It's no wonder everyone was hyped to see him join the game. I mean, you guys remember the Muramasa when meme? Fans would spam it everywhere while waiting for him to finally be playable, like a countdown for his arrival. When he finally did show up, it was like a dream come true for fans who'd been following him. Senji Muramasa, or Sengo Muramasa, is a heroic spirit who straight up looks like Shirou Emiya. And yeah, that's because he's a pseudo-servant. He's borrowing Shirou's body as his vessel and fighting in the Saber class. He made his debut in the Epic of Remnant storyline, specifically in the Shimosa chapter, and fans instantly took notice. So, if you're wondering when and how fans first fell for this character, well, the answer is simple. From the moment he appeared, Muramasa showed up as an ally in the Shimosa chapter, and people were hooked. One big reason for his popularity is the unique twist on his character. He's a Saber who claims he isn't qualified to be a heroic spirit, since, as a blacksmith, he doesn't have that heroic flair. That's why he appears as a pseudo-servant, borrowing a human vessel to manifest. Despite calling himself just a simple blacksmith without any military strategies, he's an insanely powerful, skilled fighter. He's even said to be able to cut through fate itself. His reflexes are quick enough to dodge Inshun's spear. Now, one thing that draws both Fate fans and casual audiences to Muramasa is his legend. His tale has this almost myth-like quality, and it's so widely known that it feels almost real. This is one of the reasons he's so beloved. So about one of his legends about Muramasa's blade. They're believed to be cursed weapons that brought disaster upon the Tokugawa shogunate. These swords were involved in some of the most brutal incidents within the Tokugawa family, killing Ieyasu's grandfather, injuring his father, taking the life of his eldest son, and even wounding Ieyasu himself. Because of this, Muramasa's swords are often portrayed as blood-stained, cursed weapons in kabuki theater and Japanese stories. There's also this whole myth that Muramasa himself was an enemy of the Tokugawa family. People like Yui Shosetsu, who plotted against the Tokugawa in 1651, were rumored to have wielded his sword. The infamous Yukimura Sanada supposedly owned one too, according to historical records like the Diary of Yukimura Sanada. I got a little carried away with all the lore, sorry. Basically, Muramasa is famous for his sword-forging skills, and his blades are cursed. In Shimosa, Muramasa was summoned by the counterforce about a month or two before Ritsuka and Musashi showed up, and he's all in on helping to settle the conflict there. Fans love his vibe. He acts like an older, more seasoned Shirou, but he still has that young adult body, which adds to the whole mysterious swordsman appeal. And when he first fights Inshun, you can see how strong he is. As I mentioned, he doesn't just dodge. He slices Inshun's torso clean off in one swing. Muramasa also gives Musashi the blade that can cut through karma itself, making it possible for her and Ritsuka to even take on these supernatural threats. Fans were already super into Muramasa's concept and his role in Shimosa, but the moment that truly blew everyone's minds was when he forged and used Tsumukari Muramasa to slice Amakusa's Edo castle clean in half with a single swing. Seriously, he cleaves the entire castle like it's paper. This reminded me of Arash's big finale in Camelot. You know, grand attack, complete with epic chants. But Muramasa's scene had its own CG and theme song to back him up. After that jaw-dropping, castle-cleaving scene in Shimosa, fans were practically begging for Muramasa to join as a playable character. Every year, he's been at the top of the fandom's wishlist to become playable. Now, another reason of why everyone wants him is also because he uses Shirou emiya as his vessel, which means his voice is done by Noriaki Sugiyama. Sugiyama brought so much energy to Shirou, and fans missed that intensity. Having Muramasa in-game finally gives them a taste of that again. Fans had been holding out hope for ages, just waiting to see Muramasa added as a playable character. But as time went on, FGO kept quiet, keeping everyone in suspense. Then finally, 2 years later, in 2019, Muramasa finally showed up again in the Atlantis storyline, but not in the way people had hoped. Instead of joining the players' team, he'd been summoned by the foreign god and was now teamed up with Kotomine, defending the fantasy tree in Atlantis. This twist actually sparked some tension among players. It wasn't a huge divide, but it was there. Honestly, I get it. Some people were worried Muramasa might end up getting a bad storyline, or that the author would write him off in a disappointing way. But for me personally, I think it makes things way more interesting. A character like Shirou, forced to work for the enemy, practically begs for intense inner conflict. Even though he didn't really experience deep inner turmoil, the drama and tension that could have come from it are exactly what make the story worth following. And who says an ally always has to come from Chaldea's summoning, or the usual heroic spirits? Sometimes, the best characters are the ones who aren't handed to you directly, but come through their own twisted path. But all the fan worries completely disappeared when 2021 finally came around. That's right. In 2021, Muramasa finally made his debut as a playable character, and his release was everything fans had been dreaming of. His hype was huge. Not only could players finally team up with the famous Grandpa Muramasa, but his gameplay was also unique and exciting. You see, even though he's a powerhouse, Muramasa's Noble Phantasm only has 3 hits. This means that in some farming setups, he might just fall short of generating enough NP to loop back-to-back, especially if the enemy lineup is tricky, like high HP enemies, or less than 3 targets in earlier waves. So, using him in farming teams often requires adjustments, especially at lower NP levels to make sure he can clear everything smoothly. But here's the fun part. He actually gets stronger each time he uses his NP. It gives him a 10% NP damage buff and an arts buff that lasts for 3 turns. By the time he reaches the final wave of a 3-wave fight, he's stacked up several buffs. Pair that with his first skill's arts buff, which can cap at 50%, and he can unleash a serious amount of damage on even the toughest final wave enemies. While Muramasa might require a little bit of experimenting with supports and craft essences to bring out his best, he's a top-tier farmer and a versatile unit. His stacked skill set lets him tackle various situations, sometimes even outperforming units that might be stronger on paper. Heck, if I remember right, I once saw someone use Muramasa to farm against archer enemies. Normally, Sabers are at a disadvantage against archers since archers have a type advantage, but Muramasa just crushed it. He even managed to recharge his own NP along the way, tearing through the enemies despite the class mismatch. When Lost Belt 6 came around and Muramasa became our ally, we were hit with a nostalgic scene. There was a familiar image of a blonde girl fighting against fate, with a stubborn guy by her side, always backing her up. Even though the context was different and they didn't even know each other, it felt heartwarming. Well, you can call this a bright spot in the middle of the dark and intense Lost Belt 6 storyline. Funny enough, their relationship has this father-daughter vibe, even though Artoria Castor calls him Gramps. Fans absolutely love this dynamic, and you can find tons of memes and fan art celebrating their bond. It's both touching and hilarious to see. Even with all the new servants showing up, each with unique gimmicks and powerful abilities, Muramasa's gameplay does feel a bit generic now. But his popularity is still absolutely sky-high. He's one of those male servants with massive summoning demand, even if his gameplay isn't the most special at the moment. Fans love him for all kinds of reasons, from wanting him to reunite with Artoria, Emiya, or other characters. I don't have Muramasa yet, but I'm really hoping he'll show up in my Chaldea one day too. Oh, and another reason for his popularity. This one is important. Ready? People just love his abs.